to the Good Hanging Times podcast, presented by Factura.ai. Factura.ai, multiple software built for your multi-location business. I am Megan Hardy, your host, and today we have a very special episode. We are hosting our first, and hopefully not last, founder episode. We are really, truly excited because we have our very amazing founder, Brad, here joining us today. Brad spent a ton of time, obviously, in the accounting space. And what I think stands out the most about Brad and what we're here about is really just his experience and his knowledge and kind of how it came to be. So we're going to have fun today. We're going to ask some questions. We're going to just see where things go and mostly talk about kind of where we wanted and, what the real problem was in the AP space and kind of how Factura came to exist. And more importantly, why customer service is such a key pillar for us in that missing layer. So Brad, the floor is yours. I'd really like to first start off by saying we're so thrilled to have you here and thanks for joining us. Give us the backstory about Factura, about kind of how we started and where we came from and go from there.
Sure. Thanks, Megan. It's actually an interesting story. And I wouldn't say that there was like some vision that I had to say, let's go conquer the AP world. But I started this company in 2017. And at the time, we had a different product altogether. We first started off as a BI analytics reporting platform for multi-location restaurants. And it was through conversations with our customers, multi-location customers, that they were struggling in AP. And so it was, one is a data point, two was a trend. And so two of them came to us and said, hey, we need help in AP. And we said, okay, let's go help you. And so we literally went to their offices. We sat down. We heard what their processes were. We watched how they processed AP. And we said, you know what? And they kind of showed us kind of some of the technology that they were going to go purchase, or at least that they were presented with. One of them had an accounting firm that I guess they were consultants that came in and said, hey, you should buy this software. And we looked at it and it was like, it's so clunky. It was so just dated. And so we set out to go build Factura starting in 2019. And, I'd still say in 2019 where our focus was on this other product called CFO2.
Yeah.
And when COVID hit, that kind of made us pivot in a way, is that our other business struggled a little bit servicing, obviously, restaurants. But we had built this Factura product that our customer was just saying, we love it. We saw the data, they were using it every day.
Yeah.
And compared to our other product, CFO2, I never heard once that somebody would say, I love BI. Like no one ever says, I love BI. And a lot of our customers actually say like, I love Factura. That's a different, that's a check mark, right? And then the data points, as I said, is we saw people using it on a day-to-day basis versus the BI tool. They were using it once a week, once a month. It just wasn't a critical part of their business. And so, we kind of pivoted and shifted, and now our focus is fully on Factura.ai. And what's amazing and what's unique about Factura is really those first customers and how they were structured. And because they were structured as multi-entity, multi-brand, multi-location, we actually built something very unique in the marketplace that can handle these types of businesses, that they are actually different. They're structurally different than just a regular business. From an accounting perspective, they are designed and configured differently. Their vendors, how they're set up, their entities, how they roll up, all that stuff is there's nuances. And so you need an AP solution to handle all those nuances. And lucky for us, our first few customers were those types of customers.
Yeah.
And so from the ground up, we had architected and built this thing to handle their needs. I think if we had a different customer, I think we would have built something totally different from the ground up. We kind of got lucky, and that's our niche.
I think that's really cool that obviously the customers had such an influence on our build. Is that really why, I know customer service is obviously a key pillar for us. Is that really why customer service has started and kind of ends with us always having that key pillar?
I think it even starts before starting the business. To me, customer service is just so important to any business. And, sometimes I'll go call a company. Let's say I need something, right? And I'll go call a company. And if I don't hear back from them, they've lost that on the sale, right? And it's just, to me, is just so courteous to call me back if I've left you a voicemail, like little things like that. Or, I always tell the story that, I once walked into a Starbucks to get my wife coffee, and their POS machine was out, the merchant terminal was out. And they had a little sign on it that said, if you're paying by credit card, the coffee is on us today.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is just, that is just from a customer service perspective, support perspective, is that's the right thing to do. Economically, it's not the right thing to do. You're going to lose money.
Yeah.
But from, it wasn't the customer's fault. It was the business's fault, or at least their technology fault. And so, they probably lost out on sales that day, but I think they won customers for life, in my perspective. And I always compared, I'm like, there's a coffee shop that was literally across the street. And I just always think about is, what would they have done?
Yeah.
Would they have done the exact same thing? And the answer is no. The reason is Starbucks has a customer service culture. The other business does not have a customer service culture. And it's literally the same product and going down two different paths. Which path would I want my company to be on? It's definitely the Starbucks path of service. And I always say that we're in the hospitality business.
Yes.
What is the hospitality business, right? What is
Customer
restaurant?
service.
Food is food, right? And
Yeah.
there's some that taste a little bit better, there's some that taste not as good, but at the end of the day, it's food. And so what is the experience that you get? Obviously you want decent food, good food for the value, the price, etc. But it's about that experience. It's about when you go up to a McDonald's and they smile to you, and smiles are free, that makes you feel good. That that's an experience. That's the service that you get from a McDonald's versus maybe some other um, you know restaurant where maybe in the culture is not that, right? It's just, something else, which is okay too. But it's, I always say you got to marry like the hospitality of running your business and also the finances as well. And if you can marry those two, I think you're going to have a successful business. And so, restaurants are really, they're customer service businesses that happen to sell food. And I steal this line from Tony Hsieh, who wrote Delivering Happiness. He was the CEO of Zappos. He said that he was a customer service business that happened to sell shoes. And I think that's, from my perspective, is we're a customer service business that happens to sell AP automation software. And so that's the lens that I live in, is it's customer service first, and everything else is, is obviously important, but it's got to be customer service from the lens of customer service is how can we support our customers? What can we do to just ensure that our customers are taken care of and no balls are dropped on our end? Because when you're just not taken care of from the customer's perspective, is you're not showing love, is you're not you don't feel good. There's not a good experience. But you can always, and you can turn bad experiences into good experiences depending on how you show up. And so that's what it's my ethos. It's the ethos of the company, is like, just provide good service. That's what you're there to do. That's what you signed up for. And we have to deliver it. So that's what we do, I guess.
I think that's so cool, obviously, especially in the restaurant and hospitality industry where, like you said, customer service is a backbone for them. And I think I would counter and say that customer service does have a financial impact, especially in the restaurant and financial industry, since over half of usually their business is return customers, and bad customer experience not only hurts your money now, but it hurts the future income, because then you've got to go figure out how to bring 3 more returning customers in to kind of make up for that one, which is really unique. I want to circle back. You talked a lot about multi-locations and how you probably would have built a completely different software if our first customers weren't multi-location. What really makes multi-location so different from a financial perspective than the regular kind of single location or even single concept ideas?
Yeah. I think, as I said earlier, structurally from an accounting perspective, they're set up differently. It's depending on how many entities you have, how many locations you have, how you've designed and configured your accounting system, it's not uniform across every business. I could have a business that has 100 locations with a completely different setup of how they view their vendors, the vendor IDs, the legal entities, the locations, compared to another business that has 100 locations as well. It's not, this is the way to do it. There's no right way to do it. It's every business designs their accounting the way that they want to do it. So you need an AP solution to handle all the nuances that come with it. I'll give you one example. It's not common, but it happens. In one entity, they use, let's just call repairs and maintenance. They use repairs and maintenance with a GL code 12345. But in a different entity, repairs and maintenance is 24546. It's a totally different code, right? Well, how do you have a system that can know when to use a GL code for one entity and know to use a different GL code for a different entity for the same product from the same vendor? And so that's a very nuanced thing that Factura can handle, but it's designed from the accounting perspective that way. In addition to that, as you grow from one location, 5 locations, 10 locations, 20 locations, and beyond, the managerial, the hierarchy structure of the business changes. When you own a restaurant, you're in it. You see it, you know what's going on. When you have 3 restaurants, you still have you see what's going on. When you get to 10 restaurants plus, you now need to add middle management. I need a manager to oversee these 10 restaurants or a few restaurants, a district manager or a manager, whatever you want to call it. And so as you grow, it's there's more levels. And what happens there is as there's more levels and you have more locations, obviously there's lots of things going on at the store level, and at head office level it's a different group altogether that doesn't have visibility into what's going on at the store level. And so that's where the issues arrive is invoices come in multiple ways. It through email to the store, to head office, by paper, to the store, to head office. They come in EDI files. They come in various different ways. And so as you grow, your business starts to get complicated and more complex. And so, what Factura tries to do is simplify the complexities of all the things that happen into one unified process so that no matter where the invoices are, they have to come to Factura, they have to get processed, they have to get taken care of. And then from a workflow perspective, approval perspective is as you get more locations, you want those controls in place. You want to make sure fraud doesn't happen. You want to make sure that the window guy came and did washed the windows.
Yeah.
Or the fridge man came and fixed the fridge, because it's very easy for a vendor to send an invoice. Head office has no idea whether the vendor came or did not come and just pay the vendor. So you want those controls in place to make sure that you're only paying vendors that, did the service, provide the service, gave you the product. There's no defects. It's just done based on what the vendor, said that they were going to do and what you signed up for. So that's where those are the nuances of as you grow into when I say multi-location, for us, it's typically 10 or more locations, is your organization structurally changes.
Yeah. Okay. So we've been asking the people that we've had before on advice that they would give and things like that. As you think about a group that maybe is an emerging brand or an emerging group, and they're right at that cusp of jumping from that 3, 4, 5 to 10 to 15 to even more, right? Because we know that restaurants, especially restaurants, even retail businesses like that, things that do go to franchisee, that key jump right there is usually a critical moment for them. What would be an advice that you would give them to really kind of take a step back and look at their business? What would be some of the key advice you would give them?
I think if you look at which businesses are the most successful at the front end is when they have a standardized process. When this happens, this is what we do, right? The less products you offer to sell makes it easier to have a more standardized product process. When you offer everything to everyone, it's hard to have a process because you're like, for this product, I got to do this. For this product, I got to do that. So if you think about that perspective of your business, is more is scalable when you standardize processes. I would say the same thing in the back end. The accounting is create a unified, centralized process. That's one that everyone's on the same page, because, I talk to my sales guy tells me all the time is, we hear all the time is the accounting staff, the AP staff, they've got tribal knowledge. He calls it tribal knowledge.
Yes.
For this process, we do this. For this process, we do that. This 90% of the process is this, but for this one thing, we do something a little different. And it's like, okay, but that's in a person's head. Now, imagine you take that person out because the person's sick, vacation, goes finds another job. What happens to that process? So it's not like sometimes it's not documented. And so, I'd say if you can simplify the process, don't create multiple different processes. Try to create a process and fit everything into it is obviously the best. That's what Factura does, is it's one process to handle all these different scenarios. And that is the best way, because then what do you do for store number 2? Not store number 2, but store number 22, store number 23, store number 24. Nothing changes. You're just putting up the brick and mortar, or you're putting up whatever your business is. Your process on the front end is the same because it's, whatever you're selling is how to do it. The back end doesn't change. All you're now adding in is, instead of it going to this location, it's now going to this location. The process is the same. And that is honestly the best way to scale.
Yeah. A lot of people use the term automated, right? And I feel like anybody can say automated if just 1% is automated. What does automated truly mean to you? And why does so much automation software require so much manual work?
I think there's when you create a category, I'm not saying we created the category, I'm saying when this category was created of automation, I think it was how to communicate to people as to what does software do? It's going to
Yeah.
automate, right? And so I think it gets at the highest level is things are put into a broad category. To your point, there's 99 steps in your process and you automate one step of the process, that you don't have to do anymore. I would agree with you. That's it's automated. But if you look at the AP process of what happens, at the different stages, how do you ingest invoices? How do you accept invoices? That is, step one to organize that. Then there's the data extraction. How do you ensure that you're getting the data extracted? How do you ensure that it's going to the right people for approval? How do you know, to push it to the accounting system, as seamlessly as possible? And so, there's multiple steps along the way, but and then obviously you pay your vendors. So if you look at it from the highest level of the 5 steps that need to be taken, is how involved are humans in that process? Now, there's a lot of companies out there, competitors of ours, that it's a fully AP automation, great. Maybe they do the data extraction part, and they get it 60% of the time. Maybe they get it 100% of the time, but they haven't figured out how to adjust the invoices and put it to the right location.
Yeah.
So that's not an automated part. That's a human doing the work to, fill the gap of what an automation is. It could also be that you have to assign, once it's coded, you have to then assign it to the right person for their approval. And sometimes it's seamless and sometimes it's clunky. But if the human is involved in a process, then it's not automated. That's the way I view it. And so our goal is to get, the process automated to a point where, 90% of the work is done by the system. And there is going to be some work done by humans. Like that will always be the case. At least for now. Technology might change, but at least for now. So, it's the human reviews it, but the work itself is done by our system. It extracts the data, it codes the data, it organizes how invoices come into the system, knows which location it needs to go to, automatically goes out for the approvals, gets the approvals that are needed. If there's multiple sequential approvals needed, the system handles that. There's not a human who says, I approve this. Now I got to take this over to Megan for her approval and do that. And that, comes back to that first customer that we had is they were literally emailing out every approval. And so that's a manual person, in a step along the way. We literally took that off of Jackie's plate. She doesn't have to manage the approvals anymore. That is automated. It's like off of a human's task list. And so in my mind, that's fully automated. I think what they talk about next is intelligence, as agentic AI or whatever. I don't know what the actual terms are, but
yeah,
it's taking it to the next level where I think automation has kind of failed a lot of companies, and they still have to do a lot of work along the way.
With that, what does intelligence mean to you? I mean, I know we've used that term before. What does intelligence truly mean to you?
So as much as I think if I was as a layman person, I'd say an invoice is an invoice, right? It's an invoice. What's so different? This invoice, that invoice. But I don't know why our customers have every various format of an invoice that you can imagine. And the same vendor might have multiple formats itself. And so I think the intelligence layer is going above and beyond, call it like OCR, the AI that's kind of in the past, is how do you actually get the data extracted in a better fashion? And because at the end of the day, it's the data. That's what you're trying to extract off of these these documents. There's information on there that's obviously important from an accounting perspective. There's information on there that's important from analyzing your business as well. And so I think it's as time will progress, it's gathering the data off of the invoice to allow you to provide you with the analytics. You're spending too much on this vendor compared to this, same vendor but a different location. What if you have contracts in place that it should be a uniform price, but you're actually not paying a uniform price? How do you analyze that? And are you analyzing it? And so, over time, our system will start to get better and better at doing those types of tasks beyond just the data extraction. But I think it's really, first and foremost, the intelligent layer is being able to extract any type of invoice with any format and get the data that you need. Because imagine you have I see it all the time, utility invoices where it's gas, water, sewer, trash, maybe all on the same invoice, but it's through 100 different line items.
Yeah.
But I don't need 100 different line items. I just want very specific data points off of that. That's like, you got to be a little more intelligent to get that information pointed, into versus just extract all the data and then make the human do the work to, delete lines, add lines, figure that out. And so that's where Factura is today, is we can really design models around how you want to extract the data off of your vendor invoices.
Love that. So, a couple of hot takes here just because I'm curious. Do you think a lot of finance teams underestimate how much bad data or bad processes is really costing them?
I would say 100%. I would, when I was in the sales part of Factura, I asked questions like, "Do you capture KPIs of your AP team?" And I've never heard one group ever that says, "Yep, we've got these 3 KPIs that we adhere to for our AP team to deliver on." Right? And so it's not measured. And so if it's not measured, you can't obviously try to improve it. Obviously, Factura puts in those standardizations, the seamless process, etc. You can actually now get KPIs off of it, but prior to that, you really can't, from what I've seen and what I've asked. And so, I think to your point, your question is, if you don't have a standardized process and you're like, I've got the tribal knowledge, I do one thing for this invoice or this vendor, I do it differently for that vendor, is the brain power that you need, the switching gears to go handle this invoice. Those are the inefficiencies. And so if you don't have a seamless process, this is how it is. Picture like a pipe. Invoice comes in, it's just going along one pipe, not multiple pipes, figuring out like, a tree of branches, trying to figure out like ultimately it goes in here, but then it kind of sprinkles out and then somehow gets back to the middle. Those are the inefficiencies in these businesses that I don't believe are measured to the extent that I've experienced. And those are the opportunities really to improve.
And it's those small hole in the balloon that's slowly leaking cash that you might not realize it too, which is just because it might cost you that person's time, hours, money to go back, fix, and do all that. Makes sense. Circling back with customer support and service, why do you think so many tech companies or so many vendors are getting it wrong? Like, why do you think this?
I don't know every tech company, but this is my belief. I think customer service typically reports to sales. And the reason for that is their main purpose is to upsell you and to keep you as a customer. So why is it part of sales? Is because if the customer is not there, sales takes a hit. If you're trying to grow sales, that's the place to put it. I don't disagree with it. And so what happens is that I think the focus is less on the service and more on the sales for support. And so I think it's just a structural thing. I think that's what I've determined.
Yeah.
And so for Factura, it's not. Our focus is not on let's go sell our customers. It's not let's go keep our customers, like from a sales perspective. Our focus is let's help our customers. If we help our customers, the output of that is our customers stay with us. Our customers are happy. There's no reason for them to leave to go find another solution. And so I think it's where your intent is. And for a lot of companies is that their intent is misguided into, we're here to help the customer. We're here to do something else with the customer. And the output is X. And so we just do it differently. And that's I think structurally, that's why tech companies don't get it right. And I think it's at the end of the day is, there are pressures on a lot of tech companies and companies in general to grow sales. And depends on how they're funded. There are lots of pressures that way, which I can understand. And so, sales and other groups are always siloed, to go do their own thing. And so I think that's what they get wrong. And so because of that, the customer ultimately suffers to not get the help. They're getting something that, I'll give you an example. We have a tech company. I'm not going to say their name, but I need their help sometimes. And I have an account rep, perfect. And that person calls me up out of the blue and he says, "Hey, I'm your account rep. Do you need something?" And I said, "No, not at this time." Fine. Calls me a few weeks later. "I just spoke to you. Like, I don't need you. Like, but I know what he's doing. He's trying to sell me more products within his organization. They got a suite of stuff. But then comes a time where I actually need him. And I reach out and I say, I need you. I need your help here. Can you put me in touch with your support team because I need help?" "No, I can't do that." And it's like, then what are you there for? Why are you my account rep? If you can't help me when I need your help, then you're useless to me and there's no point to have you. But because that organization is, the account rep is not there to help you, the account rep is there to sell more products. And that's what I think they get wrong.
Well, and I think in restaurant industry too, if something like you talked about your POS system, you know what I mean? If your POS system goes down or if something goes down and you need to be able to pick up the phone and call and say, "Hey, what's going on? Why can't we log in? Why can't we get this to work? Why can't we do this?" That's every minute counts. You know what I mean? Every single minute counts. I think I joked to you not too long ago where I reached out to a support team and it said someone would get back to me in a couple of hours. And then like 2 days later, someone got back to me. And by that point in time, I had figured it out myself. And so there's a level of it too that I think like time is of the essence as well and being able to get in front of people. All right, we're going to do rapid fire questions now. This is all meant to be just fun. Whatever comes first to your brain. All right. One automation you've seen, whether it's at home or whatever, that is absolutely not automation, that is claimed as automation.
I have no idea.
I've decided it's the
You
automation.
know what? I will tell you this. There are, and I've seen it, and you can go Google. There's a lot of AI companies out there or like that say they're automated and it's actually humans. So a lot of drive-through,
Yeah.
and you're like at the drive-through and you're like, oh, it's an AI. There's someone in a third world country who's actually sometimes just taking your order without you knowing it. They're literally punching it in. And so, there's companies out there that have got caught doing that stuff where it's behind the scenes. You have no idea what's happening behind the scenes. This is what I say for our AP solution. Our system extracts an invoice in 30 seconds to a minute, somewhere around that. We can't have a human doing that. That's like way too fast. I've got competitors, it takes 24 hours. I've got competitors who take 6 hours. I got competitors who take 2 days to process one invoice. And then they're an AP automation solution. And I would argue and say, well, it's just questionable.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're a technology company and you're automated, why does it take 24 hours for an invoice to come back? That makes absolutely no sense to me. I call BS on them, and I think it's just a human doing the work in a third.
All right. If you had to run one role in a restaurant for a week, what are you picking?
So I just watched The Bear, and that one it gave me anxiety and stress. I don't think I can work in a kitchen.
Yeah.
I'd probably be, the server, like anything support to be like, I want to make sure that your meal is good, and I like a waiter, I guess. And I just make sure that, they're happy, that they had an amazing time, that they had a good experience, so that they do come back.
I love that. Favorite restaurant you'll always go back to?
There's a burrito store near where I live, and I don't know, they got something about them that just like is near and dear to my heart.
I love that. Well, Brad, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. If you want to learn more about Factura, the link is below and you can check us out there. We are so excited to keep having our podcast here. If you want to be a guest, please feel free to message us. If you want to continue listening or if there's any topics that you want us to cover, please feel free to message us and let us know. Otherwise, thank you, and thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to you joining us on our next